Welcome, everyone. It's Andrew Beach. I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate their value to find great opportunities faster through a pragmatic process of branding, planning, and effective networking. If you are looking for support in your career transition, I'm here every Friday for what's called Career Happy Hour. It's something we broadcast on LinkedIn, YouTube, Periscope, and Facebook consecutively. It's called multi-streaming. You may have heard of this. And so welcome. Good to see everyone. If you would please access the chat and let me know that you can hear me okay. Sometimes the audio is good, sometimes it isn't. In other days, it's coming through clearly, and I just don't know if anybody's here. So if that's you, let me know in the chat that you're here and that you can read me loud and clear. One of the things that we look at in terms of participation in this team or this group or this community, if you will, is that we share. We share not only this broadcast to our friends, our family, our networks. There's a little share button down below. I'd encourage you to do that. But we also share our LinkedIn profile address. And when we do so, we put our LinkedIn profile address in the chat. That means that we're open to other people in this little community contacting us. Networking is hard enough in the pandemic that, hey, you know what? Wouldn't it be nice if there was a community you could go to and people would be able to say yes to a conversation offline, maybe by Zoom or phone or something like that, to get the process started, if you will. Leif, good. I'm glad I can be heard. Sounds good. Excellent. Thank you, Chandler and Jonathan and Leif and David. Leif and David both put their LinkedIn profiles into the chat, so I appreciate that. Also, this is a chance for you to get your career questions answered. So if you have questions about LinkedIn, networking, market planning, interviewing, personal branding, anything of that nature, I'm happy to answer any question related to career transition, career search for you. Just put that question in the chat and then we'll answer those questions during today's session. Good to see you, Craig. Terry, good to see you. Yes, it is snowing. Well, it was snowing. I know there's snow here in Portland where I am, but it isn't really snowing, and I didn't see any snowflakes. All I've seen so far is freezing rain. So even though there's snow on the ground, I haven't seen any snow just yet. So we'll see. Subject to change. But I did want to let you know that last week I made an error and said that President's Day was this last Monday. So I want to make a correction and be honest about it, that I made a mistake, that President's Day is actually this Monday on the 15th. I believe. So the Saturday is 13th, 14th. Yeah, the 15th. Day after Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Happy Chinese New Year, as my daughter would tell me. She gave me a nice little envelope here on, she's taken, I think, 6 years of Mandarin through school. And so she's provided me a Happy New Year. So I wanted to wish all those who celebrate Happy New Year, Happy Chinese New Year. And my daughter told me how to say it, but I couldn't repeat it even if I tried. On top of that, we do have some opportunities here to join live. If you see in the description, regardless of the platform you're joining by, in LinkedIn, you'd have to go to the top right and click see more on the broadcast. But there is a link there to join live, and you can come on live. You can ask me questions. We can get some hands-on coaching support for you and see how it goes. I like that idea. And if you're up for it, we can do that. We've occasionally also offered to review somebody's LinkedIn profile live. And so we can do that as well. So if you're up for it, just click that link and come into the waiting room here and we can have a little private chat and I'll bring you in live. Just make sure that you mute your LinkedIn stream so that it doesn't come over as an echo on our side. Good. Yes, Craig, we're doing well. Thanks for asking. So what's on top of my mind today? Well, I've had a couple of candidates recently have some, I don't know what you would call it. It's one of those things where they invest so much time, energy, and effort into a hiring process only to get a declination. Now, it wasn't so much in this case a declination. It was in a couple of other cases, but in this one, it was made it to the end, had the final two, and then lo and behold, a VP decided to go a different direction. I don't know what that means, but it certainly creates some anger, some frustration. This candidates, you guys spend a lot of time preparing and practicing and doing presentations, maybe putting together some kind of how would you say it, a portfolio. There's a lot that goes into that, and it's a lot of effort. I acknowledge that this is a heavy lift. And when you get to the end and they do nothing, I mean, that is certainly something that would cause me to be angry and frustrated and perhaps look at reasons why I should yell at them and say WTF. I'm using initials there because I want to be apropos for this platform. But I really, I'm really thinking today, how can you push through, as hard as it is, how can you push through when you get let down like that, where it seems like everything's headed the right direction, you're getting positive cues from the hiring team. It seems like the next step, sincerely, is an offer. I mean, it's either me or the other person. And at that point, it's like, okay, I can focus my efforts on maybe prepping for my first day of work or that sort of thing. And your mind starts to wander. You ever been there where your mind starts to wander and saying, hey, I got this thing in the bag. I think it's going to be me. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the hiring manager and this sort of thing. And then out of the blue, you get a recruiter call that says, hey, it wasn't you. And it even wasn't the other guy. It was just, we decided to go a different direction, different set of skills, different requisition. They started over. So your mind can wander. I found your mind can wander into depression, anxiety. No one will ever hire me. You start telling yourself a story. And whether that's true or not, it's still a reality for you that you need to process. And, at some point you're like, okay, I've given all this effort. What do you do? What do you do in that space? What have you done? Anybody have some ideas there or thoughts? Perhaps some questions? Again, I'm not the only one here that has some advice to share. So if you all have some thoughts on that, on how you recover, when you've invested that much time, energy, and effort in landing a gig and it doesn't happen, I have some thoughts there on what you could do that's positive, but I want to hear from you all too in the chat if you want to. But my first thing is, I never stop looking, ever. I mean, I'm always eyes open, looking around, even if I'm working, even if I have the perfect job, even if I have the perfect company or the perfect boss or the perfect whatevers. Okay. And many of us may think that we have that. But I don't know about you. I would have a mindset that my career is one of my direction and I need to manage it. And I know that's harsh. And often we look for companies to, lay out the red carpet. And certainly I wish that they would. But that actually is a strategic, how would I say it? That would be a strategic advantage for a company that did, right? That laid it out for you, that supported you, that thought of you as an asset, that treated you like a lifetime employee. I think that's just a totally different mindset. And there's very few companies that I can point to that treat their employees that way. So then what does that mean? Well, generally speaking, it's up to you. It's up to you to create a map, a plan, a process, right? To actually manage your career proactively. Now, it doesn't have to be sophisticated, but it needs to start with the right mindset. And I talk a lot about mindset. And we can create a mindset for ourselves that says, hey, this is my career. I'm going to control it. I'm going to manage it. I'm going to move forward. And even if I think I have something that's perfect, I know there's always something better. Always something better. Okay? And right now, many of us are feeling vulnerable, exposed, unappreciated, anonymous. I know all of these things are true because I know candidates I'm working with that feel that way. And let's be honest, it takes a lot of mental and emotional horsepower to get up every day and step in the batter's box and swing the bat. I get it. Yet, if it's something that matters to you, that process is a little bit easier. It's not always easy. In fact, I never think it's easy. It's actually hard work. The concept, though, is simple, that people get hired by those they know, like, and trust. And if I can focus my energy and effort on that, rather than the sting of rejection that I just attained, even though it was not from me, it was from somebody else. It doesn't make it sting any less. It's time invested already. That's time you don't get back. That's effort that could have been allocated somewhere else that you don't get to reuse. And I get it. So part of this is always, I've seen it so many times in candidates where they feel like, okay, this is positive. I'm getting indicators, and they just take their foot off the gas, right? The gas was down. They were going full speed ahead, and they get an interview and they start feeling some success. And all of a sudden they just let their foot off the gas a little bit, right? And they start coasting, and they stop doing the things that got them that interview in the first place, like the networking, like the applications, like the research, like the educating themselves, sharpening the saw, right? So yeah, I mean, all of us you're absolutely right. Some of us need to have a mechanism for coping. So let me put that a different way. We all need a positive mechanism for coping, because many of us may turn to things that are not positive or not healthy. And that is withdrawing. That could be, yes, Happy New Year. Thank you for that, Linda. Appreciate that. It's one of those things where, hey, I need something healthy as an outlet. Maybe that's working out. Maybe it's going for somebody put a long walk. Yes, go for a long walk. Play with your dog, play with your kids. Get yourself in a place that's positive and productive so that you can turn the page. And I say that in an affectionately strong way, that you need to turn the page as fast as possible. There's nothing worse than getting in a rut. Of course, I heard it once described that a rut is just a grave with the ends knocked out. But the idea is that we don't want to get stuck in that rut. We need to get out of it as soon as possible. So use your coping mechanism and get right back on the horse. Get back in the batter's box. Start swinging. In fact, this should be serving as motivation that you have value. I made it to the finals. I have value. I made it to the finals. I'm going to find the next one. I made it to the finals. I'm going to find something better than what they gave me or what was presented there. I am committed to finding that thing. What is that for you, by the way? What is that for you? What are you looking for that really drives you? What are you looking for that really drives you? Because there's a lot of things that could drive you. Well, I need a paycheck. Okay, well, that's elementary. But what drives you in life, professionally? What drives you to achieve greatness? What's driving you? What's pulling you along? What's pulling you along? Because there's lots of things you're probably good at, but what do you really want to do? And this is something that I've talked about a lot of my podcasts, is really deciding what it is you really want to do. What do you really want to do? Now, want to is a question of preference. What do you prefer to do? Well, if it were me, I'd prefer to teach and coach. And I don't, there's things I can do, but I don't like doing. What is that for you? So we chase those things and we try to find something that maximizes, optimizes, generates satisfaction at a very high level. So good. And I'm not just here to talk the whole time. I mean, I do that just to kind of fill the space and let people come in, get their feet wet, share their LinkedIn profile in the chat, and prepare themselves to ask questions. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I'm not just here for my health. I'm here for your support. This isn't my community. This is your community. And I want you to see success. And the only way you can do that is if you drop some questions in the chat and ask. Okay. Now, while you're doing that, I did see, interestingly enough, that's interesting. I've been having some issues here with my LinkedIn logging me out all the time. I'm sorry. Bear with me. I need to log back into my LinkedIn. I don't know why it's doing that. Anywho, good. Any questions out there? Put them in the chat. Happy to answer. Okay. Yeah. So Linda says, "Hey, I love to work with others." Okay. In what way? Providing an excellent customer experience. Why do you like providing excellent customer experience? And invent for a better future. Invent what? What do you like to invent? Okay. Think about that. and maybe put some responses in the chat. Sometimes we need to go a step further, right? There's things that we enjoy doing, but we need to be very clear, laser focused about what we're seeking. Okay. That's the planning piece, right? So the three things that I think are really readily important, most important in search is you have to know yourself. You have to know your brand. You have to know what you bring to the table, and you need to be confident in that this is the strength that I have. These are the things I want to do. And the second one is the plan, right? You need to know, what does the market look like? Who are the people in play? What are some of the factors, impacting my capability? So anyhow, I was going to say here, there is an article here that I thought was rather interesting on the LinkedIn homepage under LinkedIn News. And the title of that article is Return to office plans are stalling. I'm seeing more and more companies release their lease space. Nike announced that. The company I'm affiliated with it announced that. There's going to be a lot of commercial office space available. And a lot of companies are stalling their plans. Why? Because they're making a financial choice to delay in the event, not only for the pandemic, in the event that they could release a lease that's not allowing them to be agile, if you know what I mean. And so what it says here in this article, it says, corporate America's plans to welcome back staff to their workstations by the middle of the year have been scuppered. That's a new word for me. I might have to look that up. Scuppered as the pandemic continues. The Wall Street Journal reports, placing workers in a wide range of industries in an ambiguous holding pattern. That is true. Many of us are work from home now. And so what does that mean? That means we're going to continue to work from home. So that, so if you're up for that, that's a great trend. I like community. I like being around people, not all the time, but I like to have that option. Although some companies have pushed back return dates to September and beyond, scores of firms are rebuffing requests for specific return dates, telling employees it will be a wait and see remote work year. Frustrations over the lack of clarity are boiling over, workers say, and experts warn that burnout rates are on the rise. So what do we have to discern from that? One, companies are hiring remote workers. Doesn't matter where you live, okay? They're not going to give you an indicator of when you're going back to work. Great. I should expand my geography and start thinking about companies outside my geography that might hire me for remote work. In fact, the company I'm affiliated with, I won't mention who it is, they have an opening in New York. I was looking at that particular opening. Not that I want to live in New York, but I thought to myself, what difference does it make where I live? And most all of this company that I affiliated with is work from home. Doesn't matter where you live. So the other thing I'm seeing here is burnout rates are on the rise. How do we not know this was coming? Honestly, that people are working from home. They're not commuting. They're managing their kids. They're going to burn out. They're not connected to people and community. They're going to, it's going to have an impact on their mental health for sure. So I think what you'll also see is usage of mental health services on the rise. You're going to see usage of substances on the rise. You're going to see the usage of recovery, right? So not only the mental health, but recovery services will be on the rise. So if you have interest in any of those industries, you can see that those things will be getting increased utilization, if you will. So good. Looks like we got some questions here. Thank you so much, gentlemen, appreciate that. Let's see what we've got here. Yes, happy Friday. Thank you so much. Craig says, when a job is posted, is there a minimum time period for the job to remain posted? No, that posting does have a shelf life. And so it will eventually be removed, and it's likely already developed a list of qualified candidates probably in the first few days. That's why many people, and I agree, if you are going to apply online, you want to do it as soon as that listing hits. Unless you have some other way to get there through a connection, or you actually know the hiring manager, then it's likely not a slam dunk, okay? Looking to know how much time I have to create a connection with an employee and or the recruiter before I just need to submit my application so I don't miss out. Give yourself 12 hours. How's that sound? So if I gave myself 12 hours to reach out to everybody I could, knock on every door I could until I got a response. How many people would that be? Many as it takes. As many as it takes. Okay. As many as it takes. That's what I would advocate. Okay. Until somebody said yes. Now I wouldn't just use that as my method, right? My method wouldn't always be 100%. Hey, I'm going to make a application, and then I'm going to try to find somebody that works there, and then I'm going to wait for something to happen, right? And people know what you're doing. I mean, they know you're doing a reactive strategy, and that you're trying to, wink, wink, nod, nod, get on the list of interviewees, right? But that doesn't always work. And people see what you're doing. People see what you're doing. And that method only goes so far if there's a specific company you want to be a part of, and they see you doing these kind of tactics over and over again, they're going to see through it. What I'm really looking for is meaningful connection and conversation. And I think Terry's actually pretty good at that. He reaches out to people. He'll talk to people. He'll have conversation. He'll make new connections. He'll continue filling the top of the funnel with new people. And I haven't seen that much. So anyway, let's see. Craig, I don't know of a required minimum posting time. Our company policy is 10 days. Yeah, so there's a policy. That doesn't mean they don't have a preferred candidate or a short list of candidates already established. Okay, so we can't presume that the corporate policy is by which I have to apply. The question is, by when do you need to get on the interview list? And so I'd really encourage you to be proactive. Be proactive. Don't be reactive. Not that you avoid the application resume and that process, but I would not invest as much time in that process as I would the back door, right? Try to get a knock in, get in backstage, if you know what I mean. Yes, and that's a good call out. I really appreciate that. What Terry is saying here, there's no such thing as a mandated minimum, right? There's a time it's posted and there's a time it's not. That doesn't mean you will be considered, nor does it mean you will get an interview. Okay. What it means is that thing is posted on the internet. And of course, everything on the internet is true. So we can take that as truth. So just kidding, tongue in cheek. Good. The recruiters listed, I don't know them. Great. Then look for a hiring manager. And so if you see the title, go one step above that. And how many hiring managers can you hit? That's something I did for Terry just the other day. And it was a simple adjustment in his search parameters. And he's able to nail who the hiring manager is almost every time. If not, it's the person who used to have the job that can introduce him to the one that does. Okay. Yes. I am always willing to have an informational interview with anyone wishing to join the organization I work for. Good. I appreciate that. And you know what? That is, how would we call that? That's the one thing that many of us should do once we get back to work is pay it forward. What is our pay it forward commitment? What is our capacity to contribute to another person so that when the law of reciprocity is needed, it's natural, right? You're not asking somebody when you haven't invested in them already. Okay. Yes, please. So always make that a positive first step in your process. I like that concept. Okay. Let's see. Yes, I get it, Terry. Filling the top of funnel is one thing, but getting to the right people with the right conversation is the steeper climb. It isn't always, right? If every time you reach out to somebody, it's a cold outreach, that is always a steep climb. Yes. Okay. But if you reach out to somebody you know, and they have a quality relationship and they can introduce you, you don't show up there alone. Okay. You're showing up there on the shoulders of another person. Okay. So everybody I've ever, I think, introduced you to, or, most of the people in my network, I do my best to say, okay, this person should respond to you, right? This person should have this availability. They should be supportive. And I think even Leif is here. I've done a couple of those for him, and he's gotten real value out of that, thinking that he never would. And for someone who's new to the networking game, I think that speaks volumes of his willingness to move forward in the process. So good. Yeah. So I don't know. Sometimes, if we're high enough in the organization, we're also working to try to create a position for ourselves. And although that can be done, it certainly requires a lot of trust And most of the people I know that have positions created for them are ones that already have an existing relationship with the hiring manager or hiring team in some way. And they just allocate resources in a different way and make it happen. So good. Any other questions out there? So back to this topic, actually, the news topic here about going back to work. I also found it interesting in terms of mindset. So as a mindset, as a job seeker, what should I think? What should my mindset be? My mindset should be everybody's hiring, whether they're advertising or not. Everybody's hiring, whether advertising or not. That's the first thing. Second thing is everybody has space for you as a remote worker. How do I know? Because very few companies are going to go back even before September. It's only February. That's another 7 months at minimum. So what would that mean? That means, hey, they got to hire somebody, and they may be in a position where it doesn't matter where those people live. And yes, you may have to have a relocation conversation at some point, but why introduce that? I wouldn't. Maybe you just keep looking. You take the job and keep looking. Use your best judgment on that side as to how much you want to string somebody along in a process, but, anyhow, but I just thought that was interesting. There was another article there that kind of piqued my interest that I thought might be applicable to y'all. Let's see. No, that's not it. Yeah, it's finding a salary that's just right. So here it is. Salary negotiations are among the most anxiety-provoking parts of a job. A person may worry that asking for too little or too much could cause issues for their wallets or with potential employers. Stephanie Heath, who is the founder of Soul Work and Six Figures, said on the most recent episode of Get Hired Live that job seekers should research their salary ranges before interviews. Couldn't agree more. Kudos to Stephanie. She suggests that job seekers, 1, look for salary information on crowdsourced websites. 2, look for salary information from competing companies. 3, ask people on social media groups for their opinions. And 4, ask people in similar positions for possible salary ranges. So once again, 50% of what she recommends falls in what category? It doesn't fall under research on the internet. It falls under people, right? Ask people. Here's the thing. One of the reasons you may want to have an internal champion and actually develop a strong connection with somebody inside your target company is because they might feed you information on positions that haven't been posted yet, but are about to. They're getting budget, they're getting approval. There's a process, okay? And 2, they might be willing to divulge to you the pay bands and the pay ranges for the positions you're seeking. Wouldn't that be valuable information for you? And so maybe your purpose in developing these relationships initially isn't a job and isn't salary driven, but could be there because you took the time to invest in a trust-filled relationship. Now, I say that, and some of you are thinking, well, what is a trust-filled relationship? It's an investment of time. That's really all it is, and demonstrating the capacity to have integrity, so that you say you do what you say you're going to do. If I said I'm going to follow up with somebody that I was introduced to, what do? I follow up with that person and I let them know what happened. That's me doing what I say I'm going to do and getting back to somebody that I actually did it. Okay. Not that I'm doing that for my own self-aggrandizement. I'm doing that to build a relationship of trust. And there are some people, yes, that you want to build relationships with, and there's some that you don't. That's just normal. Okay. Now, when it comes to salary, I think the interesting thing is a lot of people say, hey, I need to research these salaries before interviews. I would even maybe do a quick search before I even make an application, or even go talk to somebody in a network situation. I'd want to know, hey, if I'm going to meet a hiring manager, and I don't know if they got a job for me, but I see they have titles in these kind of ranges, I'd want to know what that looks like in advance in case that question comes up, and to know whether or not I'm talking to the right person. Anyhow, if that makes sense to you, let me know in the chat. Appreciate that. Good. Let's see. We have been, forced. I like that. We have forced the work remotely issue due to the governor's orders. Many of the professional staff are clamoring to get back to the office. I would be too. I'd love to be back to the office. The company I'm affiliated with, guess what? They released the lease on the property that they had, and they took a co-working space, right? So I don't know that there's even enough room in there for us to do anything, specifically if we're talking about distancing and masks and all that. And so, c'est la vie. But yes, there are mandates, there are governmental, forces that are preventing this. I get all that, but it's going to vary by state. And so in Oregon, I'm experiencing something different than somebody may be experiencing in Nebraska or Iowa or Idaho or whatever. So just know that it's going to depend on the state. So, I mean, I like being in an office, not all the time, but occasionally, so that I can actually build a relationship with my coworkers and that sort of thing. Good. Any other questions out there? Or if you want to come on live, there is a link in the description to come on live. You have to click on the little thing in the top right to see it. But you should see it there. You can come on live. Tara, if you want to come on live, we can chew the fat. Dave, you can come on live. That's fine. Love to hear your perspective, get to know you better. Craig, of course, is here. Chandler is here. Let's see. Who else is here? Tracy is here. Tracy, you could come on live. We could have a little chit chat. Yes, let's connect. I like that. Happy Friday. Let's connect. Happy New Year. Greetings. Happy St. Valentine's Day, too. Yes, of course. Of course. I mean, Terry, of course, right? Of course. I hope the company is prepared to address safety and health issues when return to work whistles goes off. Yes, of course. Right. And, so now we get in that sensitive topic we talked about a while back. Are you willing and able to have sensitive conversations about, the pandemic and maybe having to do vaccines? What is that going to look like? Are companies really avoiding that topic until there's, how would you say, herd immunity? They're not going to force anybody to get a vaccine because that feels kind of wrong. I guess it depends on your ethics, of course, but and your perception or otherwise of vaccines and their efficacy. But anyhow, that certainly is something I'd be really concerned about. All right, so we're going to try a different one here, Terry. I'm going to bring you in, but I'm trying things with the chat on the screen. And anyway, I'm just working some stuff here. Let's see how this goes.
All right.
How are you doing, sir? Happy Friday.
And to you.
Happy cocktail hour.
Shoot, I knew I was forgetting something.
I've only got high quality H2O, so.
Well, good, Adam Sandler.
Yeah. What's on your mind, Terry? How can we help you today?
Oh, not much. I think I think the challenge that you were talking about earlier about just getting back up off the mat after you've been knocked down once or twice is always a big challenge, and it's ongoing.
Yeah. Well, and if somebody has a protracted search, it certainly feels like it's a daily occurrence. And you have to have the Constitution and the, purpose, a daily purpose, to keep going and to have that resilience. So, yes. I appreciate the effort it takes to find, career advancement opportunities or even, hidden jobs, all this. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and the challenge, the probably the most challenging part of it for me is the whole thing that you were talking about earlier about, the playing field being opened up. It's not simply that, you're looking necessarily at things that are in your backyard, but the entire world, in a certain sense, is your oyster now, because we have this rhythm around remote work, and plenty of organizations that are really signing up for it. So it almost becomes overwhelming just to think of it in terms of, gosh, who should I go talk to today? New York, Boston, San Francisco, London, Paris, Rome. that if you look at it that way from an opportunity standpoint, my God, it's giant, it's gigantic,
Yeah.
and the biggest question is, where do you even begin? Where do you start? I've made some connections with some nationwide recruiting firms that have been interesting to talk to. But oddly enough, they're still very much, and the clients they seem to be working with are very much kind of focused in the here and now backyard space, right? Even some of the big, well-known high-tech, high-profile, consulting firms are still kind of in that mentality. It's really interesting how, those folks who should be on the forefront, the bleeding edge of this new landscape of how to create opportunity for organizations that, don't necessarily have the talent pool in their backyard, or who are interested in exploring what talent pools may exist outside of their backyard, are, how are those, organizations, those consulting firms, those placement firms and so forth, how are they driving that message, right? Or are they? I don't know. My impression is they're not. I mean, and that's admittedly an extremely narrow perspective based on,
Right.
10 or 12 conversations I've had with 10 or 12 different firms. But lo and behold, their mantra back to me is, yeah, great, but, we're here and you're there. So,
Well, yeah, not everyone's going to work out, right?
right.
And so I think to me, part of this is deciding which geographies would you be okay relocating to if it was the right opportunity.
Right.
And you get to decide what right opportunity is. And I would probably start there.
Yeah.
Right. So we have always, my wife and I talked about like Phoenix or someplace in Texas. Right. I mean, I could probably have a short list of 4 or 5 geographies that if we had the right opportunity, we would go there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that I think each of us, if we have families, we need to discuss with the CEO, if you know what I mean.
Uh-huh.
What's up that way? But that's how I would do it. I mean, I would look at the places that I would think about. I talked earlier about preferences. Right? Where is your preference? Right. So if I have an affinity, let's assume, for things like, I don't know, this might be a tangible example for you, cannabis. Not that I'm into smoking it or using it, but I'm interested in what's happening in terms of that as a technology.
Yeah.
Then I can look for that kind of industry or that kind of opportunity anywhere. It doesn't just have to be local to where I am, but where are the players? Who are the top 5 in that industry? And where are they located? And who are their suppliers? And who are their vendors? And who are their customers? Well, we know kind of who their customers are, but, I would just be really interested in pulling on a thread of preference for myself.
Yeah.
And so if I was to do it, that would be based on, things that we have talked about, like a plan. I call it a marketing plan, a dream job description, or what have you. There's a group of opportunities somewhere, and it's just you pulling on that thread until there's no more thread or there's a job. That's how I look at it.
Yep.
And then you got to find a new thread or what have you. Anyway.
By the way, good to see you too, Mr. Coates. No, you're absolutely right. And it does come down to, what you're interested in, what you're willing to do, and what you're not willing to do, right? Where you're not willing to go or what have you, but just making those sort of qualitative decisions around, what's within the, acceptable template, right? What does the CEO approve of? So.
Yeah. Well, and I think as a job seeker, this is an opportunity of a lifetime to build a geographic, a non-geographic network, right? That you can say, okay, who are the thought leaders in blank? They're all over the place. I can now connect with those people because I know, at least for many of the companies on this article, it's like, hey, we're not looking till September. So when we start adding this up, it's like, man, we're going to be approaching 2 years work from home when a lot of people just they're not amenable to that, or they thought it was okay at first and now they don't like it or what have you. And some people maybe never want to go back. But either way, this, they called it the limbo, or there's no decision being made. That means people are open to having conversations. And I would look at this as an opportunity, again, to double down on the networking and start thinking about people I can talk to because they're available. In the future, they may not be, right? They're going to have, at some point a year from now, or, maybe even later on, right? They'll be in an office, they'll have a commute, they have to pick up the kids from the daycare and all that, right? All the things that will come in because you have people back in an office.
Yeah.
Okay. You currently don't have those constraints.
Yeah. Well, the larger picture though is that no matter what, no matter how much back to the office we go, the template's different. The template is not the same. It will never, if it is ever the same again, I'll be surprised. And so the bigger picture is, how do we as job seekers take that as an opportunity, right? I mean, how do we engage in a way that is suggestive of a new horizon? How do we present the premise of, this is not the same world, and I'm here for you, right? I'm here. I get that. I understand that. I embrace the fact that it's not new, not the same world. And here's, somewhat to your point about, what does your, template look like? But really it's a matter of, understanding that the template itself is different. The entire model is different. And it's, and I'd be stunned if, 3 years from now, we're back doing exactly what we were doing in 2019 from a work practice perspective. Because, well, definition of insanity and all that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think this is, this is where companies need to be agile, right? They need to be versatile. They need to get their work done. They can't just cut off a section of their employee base just so that they can, follow their desires that way to have everybody in an office. Well, it's not going to happen. I mean, even when companies relocate headquarters, my suspicion is there's still a skid mark somewhere. And I say that in an affectionate way, that there's still somebody at the place where you used to work that in the city your company used to be, right? Just because Boeing left for Chicago doesn't mean there isn't still a lot of people from Boeing living and working in Seattle, Right. Yep. So anyway. Well,
and again, what I think, and maybe I'm generalizing too much, but I think there are plenty of people who are in the job market space, if you will, that, there needs to be kind of a meeting of minds sort of halfway. Organizations have the lion's share of the responsibility and challenge in terms of determining how they're going to go about working and how they're going to go about achieving the results that they look for and so forth. But, we as professionals have some adjusting that we need to make as well. There's a whole psychology about, you talked about burnout, about, managing priorities and about expanded work days and so forth. And we're just on the cusp of trying to figure out how to make all that work, right? And as employees, as people that are going to go, back to work in some kind of modified, model, some way, shape, or form, we're going to have to bear some of the burden of, making adjustments ourselves. And I say that only because there's a lot of people who are out of work who have never experienced working from home or working remotely or what have you. Whereas there are people that you and I both know that's all they've ever done, right? So, so this whole hybrid model can serve, both ends of that extreme, but, there's adaptability that we're going to have to go through as workers as well as organizations, to get there. And that's the thing that I think we grapple with. I mean, the sociology of this is remarkable, but I think, as we as applicants to positions look at things, you've said this before, get to the point where you're having the conversation. We'll worry about the whole relocation piece and the whole remote piece and so forth. Let's talk first about what we can do and how we can do it, right? And then we'll talk about where we're going to do it. And can we do it? Can we actually make that work?
Yeah. So David says, I think the companies that embrace the remote worker will have access to a higher level of talent than those stuck in the brick and mortar mode. I'm not sure that you can make that claim. Certainly, the more open you are to various kinds of work arrangements, then that statement is true, because not all the quality talent wants to work remotely. I don't know about you, Terry. What do you think about that?
Well, I think, I tend to agree with Dave to a certain point. I think the companies so hybridizing what the two of you are saying, being open to it and being, and for us as workers, to piggyback a little bit on what Tracy just added too, is that, there's this whole, we're still at this point where there's, a level of uncertainty that's just out of control, right? We don't know from week to week practically what's going to happen. We've got all the politics and all that other nonsense. And then we've got the realities of just what can open and what can't open, right? And that uncertainty is going to be with us for a while. But I think that the more organizations are open to figuring out ways to do the work and figuring out how to measure work and measure success as a matter of productivity and output and creativity and so forth, those are the companies that are going to do better in this scenario than companies that are just simply not willing or able to make that leap. I still go back to, the CFO that I worked with not all that long ago, that, this was what that person needed, right? To be able to say, if I can't see them in their chairs, I am not trusting that they're working. And this is somebody working in a very sophisticated environment, right?
Right. Well, that's certainly that's a coaching opportunity, with some insecurity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly there's every example to support an argument that we could find. So the thing I'm looking at as a person looking for opportunity or a job seeker is that I need to be flexible in a good way, right? And flexible isn't a word I like a lot, but I need to be versatile. I need to be capable of getting down a hiring process long enough so someone can actually give me an offer that I can work with. And many of these people that I found, when I interact with them, I could tell they're making fear-based decisions, not from a candidate perspective, but from a company perspective. If fear of loss, fear of the unknown, there's all this fear dominating companies right now about what the future looks like, and will we have a job, and should we hire more people, or should we lay off people, or, the decisioning just doesn't seem very rational right now.
Well, I think part of it's based on, the impact that each individual industry is experiencing, right? If you're a professional in the travel industry, you've probably got a lot of concerns, right? If you're an individual working in technology that has to do with infrastructure, IT, communications, and so forth, you're probably not having the same set of concerns, right? And so on those terms, I guess, I don't have, I wish I had a magic bullet for that one, or a silver bullet for that one, but I don't. But I think
I think that plays really into your strength, Terry, is that if you're seeing that a company is making fear-based decisions, you can be the calm voice in the room,
right,
to help them process this. And now I'm seen as a resource or an asset, not a job seeker.
Yeah.
And so part of this is understanding the audience and adapting, being versatile in your presentation of your skill sets or your capabilities to work remotely, or to add value to remote work teams that you maybe have walked that path effectively in the past.
Yep.
Now I'm giving comfort and safety and asset and contribution to that person, to where now they're like, wow, okay, I could see this guy working here, this gal working here.
Right. Yeah. And, to Tracy's point a moment ago about, companies that are reassessing, the way we do what we do, that's really where and that fundamentally is where a lot of fear comes from, like it or not. It's great that it's happening, because if it's happening for the right reasons, if I'm if I'm a service industry, specifically, or a service person specifically in transportation or hospitality or something like that, I really do want to be, I certainly want to be at the table having the calm voice conversation with the not so calm voices, saying, okay, but look, can we do this the right way, right? And can we do this in a way that minimizes challenge, pain, et cetera, to the extent possible, maximizes the possibilities, and realistically, as we start to pivot, again, borrowing from what I'm seeing Tracy say, reskilling ourselves, right? And rebuilding our workforce in a way that addresses what we are going to try to accomplish now in this pivoted mode, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and to be, just to play that point out one step further, that pivoted mode ideally is a situation that lends itself to new opportunity for new talent based on where we are now going, right? So, adapting, I'm trying to kind of assimilate a couple of different things at once here.
Yeah.
But,
tailoring your message.
Right.
Is that what you're looking for?
Kind of, yeah. But, I think where it winds up is that, like it or not, organizational change and organizational growth and development has always been a source of fear. And now it's exacerbated. And just because it's not been handled necessarily very brilliantly majorities of times, let's say. I mean, organizational change done poorly, creates a whole rat's nest of stuff, right? And, there's numerous examples of poor execution, and the examples of good execution in organizational change are the ones that people write books about, right? So you read about Toyota or about whomever, right?
Right.
So there's a natural fear that is now exacerbated by the situation, right? Because organizations are being compelled to consider how to pivot rather than, making the decision organically. So, so for the job seeker, you're absolutely right. If they can tune into what, for any given company, for a company that, for example, that I'm really, really interested in working for, right? What I should be doing is be very tuned in to what I can find about what they are going through, so that when the opportunity presents itself, I can be that calm voice in the room, right? And the same is true for any of us, right? Is if we have particular companies that we zero in on, then we really want to pay very close attention to what they're doing and what they're not doing, so that we have a better understanding walking into the situation of how we can help and how we can provide value. So my 2 cents worth.
Perfect. I like your 2 cents.
Thank you.
And I'll raise you a dime. I got one around here somewhere.
You're tapping my bank account, my friend.
Well, I do have a little envelope with some candy in it. If you, payment in candy is good. Yeah. Good. So it says here, I'm researching the internet for forward projections for the next decade. I keep seeing key industries being cloud and cybersecurity. These are great opportunities where certifications can be beneficial for reinventing your career path. Yes, I agree. I think we should all be doing an assessment to see what skills would be tangentially related, so that we're not going so far out of our scope or domain that we're out of out of the circle, and have to start from zero.
But that raises an interesting question, though, because what does that circle look like? Tracy makes the comment about cloud and cybersecurity and so forth. I've had, very limited exposure in both cases. I don't see a pathway to becoming an expert in those fields based on my background. So my question is, and this is a legit question. I'm not trying to set it up here. My question is, how can I take what I know how to do and plug it into those spaces?
Yeah.
If that's the direction I want to go in.
To think their issues are any different than any other organization, exponential growth. I think one of your strengths, you said, is hyper growth trajectories, right? I work in, and I work in where there's a lot of constraints, right? So I think to think it's different, I don't think that's true so much as appearing to be part of the industry, meaning, hey, I need to appear to know and understand enough about this industry to talk intelligently with a person in a position of power who has a challenge that I can resolve. And often we think, Terry, we talked about this before. Often we think we need to have all the answers, when truthfully, we just need to have some really good questions. And if we approach it from a consultant perspective,
Right.
we might understand that situation better, number one. And number two, that person might look at us and say, wow, you ask a lot of good questions, or yeah, you're giving me a lot to think about, or, you're really kind of inducing them to think of you differently than someone just out looking for a job.
Right.
So I don't know. Certainly looking at those industries and sharpening your saw and maybe adding some skills in that space wouldn't be out of bounds.
Yeah.
I just don't think, there has to be an overlap between what you have or already know and what they need. So also now we're getting into some tech, Azure and all these different things. I'm going to skip over that. Recommending paths for change. Terry, you are outstanding. The outstanding Terry Smith. Terry, you are outstanding at assessing an organization and recommending paths for change. Dave must be a fan.
Well, Dave and I know each other, and
okay.
And we've worked together. So thank you for that, Dave. I appreciate it. That's very kind of you to say. And honestly, he's right. That's something I do really well. And I'm not trying to sound arrogant. That's just, I'm embracing the fact that I believe in myself in that space, right? And so that's a huge opportunity, right, to present. And now that you've said it that way, Dave, you've just sent me off on an entirely new tangent. So a good one too. So thank you for that. That's very cool. But yeah, that's an interesting thing,
Which part? The tech part or what Dave said?
Well, the tech part's cool because it's a good opportunity to expand the horizons and stuff. But what Dave's saying is basically, same thing I was just saying a minute ago. Find the organization that is doing, me too, man. That is doing that kind of change and that kind of organizational assessment, and engage with them as that person that says, look, here's what I'm good at. I'm good at coming in and making the assessment and making, reasonable recommendations based on the assessment. That's what I've done that a lot. And yeah, that's interesting.
Good. See, now you got your wheels turning, and maybe you and Dave are going to go have some drinks in a conversation, even if it is virtually speaking.
Good point, Dave. Virtual drinks.
Yes.
We'll talk.
Yes, of course. And maybe Dave can write you a recommendation if he hasn't done so already on LinkedIn. If that's
He's been kind enough to do that already.
Okay. Maybe you need to write him one.
Oh yeah. Have I done that, Dave?
Flattery gets you everywhere, Dave. Way to go. But I think the other part of this is, is we're identifying things that we can all do to sharpen the saw. And I'm a big advocate of sharpen the saw. However, we need to be cautionary tale here in terms of those that are currently looking for work and not employed, unless you have unlimited financial runway, which I don't know why you'd go back to work, but either way, sometimes we look at education or sharpening the saw as the reason we're not finding opportunities or not getting interviews or not, so we look at it, oh, I'm deficient in some way, when, that couldn't be further from the truth. You have not established perhaps a trust built relationship to the point where someone says, I see your value now, and I know where you fit in, and I can teach you the rest. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate. And we talked about this a little bit, maybe last time, about the recruitment industry and their mindset of filtering out rather than, finding how you fit. Finding how you fit is a much different mindset than filtering out. And unfortunately, in the interest of, getting through 30 to 40 recs and getting somebody onboarded and in the seats that they need to fill. We've lost that. I think a lot of companies have lost that, and they're afraid because of the current circumstances, maybe to invest in that kind of thing. At least that's what I would see happening.
Right.
Not that any company would be investing in that in the first place. Anyway, what are your thoughts there? None?
I'm still absorbing what I just saw on the chat here. Dave, congratulations. That's awesome news. Thank you. Very cool.
Retirement. Interesting.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who tried retirement. They got bored, or they just wanted something to do. They went off. They went back to work. Anyway,
yeah. In some capacity, sure.
Yeah, doing something. Yeah. So I think that's the interesting part about LinkedIn is how many people I see that put, hey, retired from such and such.
Yeah.
Well, that's a circumstance. I mean, put in there what you're doing now, what you're interested in now, where are you going now? And that doesn't have to be work. That could be Boys and Girls Club. That could be Habitat for Humanity. That could be the food bank. Take your pick.
Right.
So I think people miss the value of LinkedIn after they're done working. They're thinking, I don't need this anymore. But there's a lot of people on here that can help you in whatever you intend to do next, even in retirement.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, not that I'm saying Dave is doing that or that's something that is happening, but I see it a lot on the platform. Good. Awesome. Well, we made an hour, Terry. Look at that. You helped me fill the hour. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Fun to be here.
Any final words before the weekend here?
No, it's holiday weekend, as you pointed out. So I just, everybody, I would say for those in Portland, stay warm, stay safe. Don't press your luck. It's supposed to get worse tonight. So, stay home.
Yeah. And guess what? Everybody else is doing the same. And I know people that had plans this weekend where they booked something at the coast or, at the mountain or whatever, and they've made decisions to cancel those plans and stay home.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Well, I'm at home. What am I going to do? Maybe I could have a network meeting with Terry Smith.
Yeah. Terry Smith's around all weekend.
Good.
Terry's working on a project having to do with a very fortuitous phone conversation earlier this week. So that's kind of cool.
Excellent.
But I'm around.
Awesome. So I really encourage everybody to connect in the chat. If you haven't yet, put your LinkedIn profile there. That's an indicator to everybody here in this community that you're open to having someone reach out to you and having a networking conversation. No, how would you say it? No contingencies there or low stakes, just a conversation to get kind of the pump primed so that you feel comfortable doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, Terry.
Cool, brother. Thanks,
my friend. Take care. Be well. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming to this edition of Career Happy Hour every Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. As long as I'm alive and, still have the bandwidth and the fortitude to show up, I will certainly be here to support your success, whatever it takes. So hang out, connect with people here you see in the chat, and we'll see you next Friday. Bye now.